شلومو
هاثي وزبنة حوبو تالية تسمو إلى نيشا تتشافع ومكشروة لأنه هاوي لزمومو ببريثة كولا حوبو تالية أتشاتو قدوه مي حمشحصر وشتحصر بو يرحو دنشتو قدوه بو وهدو عتيقود أصيريسكا تكتيو إشمي بوشتا إي بيب سودر تالية نطرينا كولي خود أوثيتو لتري يوماني قدوه غلبة ميدون حفيتوثي باسيمي إباية قدوه زاموري غلبة قدوه نيني عبد لحد لحدو عزيز صليبة، بشار يوحانون، سرغون غورو، آرام قرياقوس، ألبرت ويليام، باسكال، نغم أدوار موسى، إيلونا دنحو، صبروا طلع عينونو شيء إذا طعينو استك طلب منه شبقونه. قدوي غلبة ميدوني باسي مكتوي في توثو مي حضرة دنو شحر نستي خد سربوية وأرمنوي مشتود في عمينا قدوي بشرورو فيستيفال اسمه حوبو تلية يعني سودو تلية كتيو حوبو كلوزم دويو حوبو توخو عمينا ما فيتينا تري ومتفيشي مو عمره حمشحصر واشتحصر بو يرحو دنشتو دأتشاتو نطرينا نخو حمشحصر واشتحصر بو يرحو يوني
شلومو عميخو إلى اندباسو قيومو بو بارلمنتو إوروبا قاموسينا كيتو قبوي حاثي لو بارلمنتو هاتو خد برنوشك تخو قد محتيتو وقولتخو وهاتي يبعو سيدي أديوما مشتوتفو بقبوي مشمعو قوليخو إلو أشو الخويو علي ديمقراطي علي حيروثو ددخو خد فرصوفو بس إيلان ستخد عامو ينقد محتوتو وقولتخو ما حيتو لي علي نمرة دنشتو بليستادي سوسيال ديمقراطر تودي ساقي
شلام لخم برجانم يقرأ وبشينا تي لخو خاجة خيتا بأسيريا TV. In today's episode, we are welcoming a very renowned guest, the author Christine Chaillot, who just published her new book about the Church of the East. Today in this episode, we're gonna know about her more and talk about her about the coming book. This is her new book, which is called The Assyrian Church of the East, History and Geography. First of all, I would like to welcome you to Assyria TV, and we are very honored to have you here with us.
And I'm very happy to be here in Assyria TV.
Thank you. We would like to start the questions so our viewers could get to know you a bit more. Can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself and what inspired you to write this book on the Assyrian Church of the East?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a strange bird because I am born in Switzerland, so I'm a Swiss citizen from Geneva, which is a Protestant place. So my family was Protestant, my mother was Catholic, and I became Orthodox. Greek Orthodox of the Patriarchate of Constantinople, which is Istanbul today in Turkey.
Yeah.
And so I was very interested not only in these what you call Rome Orthodox churches, but also in all the Oriental churches. And I began to write about life and spirituality of the so-called Oriental Orthodox churches, that is the Syrian Orthodox Church, the Coptic Church, Ethiopian Church, and Armenian Church. And you have also a branch, of course, in India of the Syriac tradition. And so, well, now my books have been translated into 12 languages, including in Arabic, for the people of the Middle East who don't read in English.
Yeah.
And so, well, one of my last books was on the Church of the East, and as you said, the subtitle is History and Geography, because the Assyrian Church of the East, it is the official title of this church, you know, has been really, has a fantastic church history, and because they have been present all around Asia. It's a purely Asiatic church, because the Middle East is included in Asia. And as we know, this church has been present in China already in the 7th century. So it's a fantastic history, and this is why we have to know about history and geography, and we must connect the two, because to understand like how were these places where the people of the Church of the East were living. And maybe we discuss this later, but for example, I was in Central Asia last autumn, and I was so happy to visit some archaeological places. We shall discuss it.
We will go through these points through the interview, but just to get an idea about the process of your research that you've done about the book, what was your, let's say, insights into your research process? Were there any surprising discoveries along the way, or particularly any challenges as well that during your writing of this book?
Well, as I said, I began to write about the so-called Oriental Orthodox churches, and then I thought I must also write something about the Church of the East, because this church is not very well known, not very well recognized, even among other churches, you know. And at the same time, it's a very ancient apostolic church, you know. So we cannot forget it. We cannot pretend that it does not or did not exist or does not exist, and you are an alive church. So it is for the people who don't know about your church, and it's for your own people also to remember, you know, about their own history. And so I think it's I try to write this history, which is a very complicated history. I try to put it in some explanations which are, I try to be not one-sided, but to explain things also, yes, as clearly as possible, to be objective.
Objective and neutral.
I try.
So I think...
And this is what your patriarch Ma'awa liked, I think, that I was not taking sides, you know.
And I think this could be very challenging when writing a book when it comes to history. And there's, you know, I think the Assyrian Church has been around 2,000 years now, maybe more. So it's not easy always to find historical facts around that. So I think that would be a big challenge for you.
You have a few books, but maybe they take sides, you know. So in fact, when it's also very difficult sometimes to choose for what to do with dates, because we are not quite sure until now, you know, of certain dates. For example, for your patriarchs, when were they patriarchs of the Church of the East? And you find different lists with different dates. So, for instance, I chose to follow what David Wilmshurst is writing in his book on the Church of the East, because he's not a religious man, he's not a Christian, I mean active Christian, so he works on manuscripts, you know, and for me that was a good basis, because it's, as you said, neutral. It's just, you know, a scholarly research.
We would like now to talk about a little bit more in details about the book. In the book, you mentioned about the early development of the Church of the East in Mesopotamia in general. Can you describe its significance and the role of the Solsha Sitisphon in this book, or about the church, in what you wrote about?
So, well, you know, that this name Assyrian comes from your old people before the time of Christianity, and the word was introduced again at the end of the 19th century to name your church. And I explained before that your church is not very well known. And in the preface of my book, Sebastian Brock, who is a very great scholar of Syriac studies, he explains that in the history of the church, which is a book which was written by Eusebius of Caesareus, he writes about the Christians in the Byzantine Empire. And the people of the Church of the East were not in the Byzantine Empire, they were living in the Persian Empire. And as you know, these two empires were fighting for centuries, you know. So it is already at the beginning when they wrote the first histories of the church, and this was followed up, unfortunately. They tend to forget to name the Church of the East, you know, and this is one reason why we forget about your church. So I think this was also a way, you know, to also at the historical level, but also at the ecumenical level, that I think that today your church must not be forgotten, you know. You are part of the very ancient churches, so you deserve all respect and love.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So this is the
and Seleucia Ctesiphon was a capital, and so this explains why, you know, like today the head of the church, they decided to have the seat of the head of the church in the capital city. And this explains that after that, you know, they moved later to Baghdad, because when Baghdad became a capital, etc.
So this is the role that it has on the early development of the church. It is how the seat
It was not a role in the development itself. It's just because, you know, Seleucia Ctesiphon was the capital of the Persian Empire. So, you know, they had, of course, the church people had to relate to the Persian government, and so, of course, it was just practical to be close to the government, you know, or to other governments in the future history.
Okay, I understand. So, you talked about moving from, you know, the development of the church, the early development. Then you mentioned also in the book the influence of the Assyrian church were, you know, expanded towards Central Asia and other places. So, how did the Church of the East was able or managed to expand so significantly across Central Asia and across Asia in the 7th century? How did they manage to do that?
So, as I just said, you have to remember, you have these two great and very large empires, Byzantine and Persian empires, you know, one more on the west, one more on the east. And so sometimes, I mean, the Church of the East people suffered martyrdom, but at other times it was possible for the church to expand, as you say, in the Persian Empire itself, and it was a very large area, you know, including some parts of Turkestan or Uzbekistan of today, you know. So you have to know well this geography in the history, you know, to understand the context. And for example, when the Persian Empire invaded Egypt, what we call Egypt today, well, then the Church of the East could even implant some parishes and church life in Egypt for a certain time, or in Damascus, you see. So, but that was for a time, and then again the political and geographical circumstances changed, you know. So that the main expansion of the Church of the East was to the east.
To the east.
Because the west was Byzantine or with Syrian-Orthodoxe, Armenians, etc., you know.
We also talked a bit that your book has also maps, because you mentioned how it is very important to understand geography in order
Yes.
to understand history. So for our viewers, when they read the book, they can also look at these maps
Yes.
where all these details you are explaining can
Yes.
be seen.
And all the main names in the book
Yeah,
are on the maps.
exactly.
I try to be very pedagogic, you
yeah.
know. We cannot speak of history,
No,
you know, in an abstract way. We have
Exactly.
to understand things.
you said that this expansion towards the east, how is the influence now? Because you talked that there's still influence of the Assyrian church in part of Asia, and you have visited some of these places, as I understood. Can you elaborate more and tell
Yes.
us about it?
So we have to understand, first of all, that the Church of the East in the Middle Ages has been the largest church in the world, you know, in terms of the number of people, but also at the geographical expansion, because, as we said, it was from the Mediterranean Sea until China, which, as you said, expanded, where they arrived in the 7th century. So that was nearly 1,000 years before the Catholic missionaries arrived in China, and they had very good relationship with the Chinese emperor. They were very well welcomed. They recognized, you know, the beauty and spiritual message of the gospel. The emperor even gave some money for the Church of the East to build a monastery near, just outside the capital.
Wow.
So you see, it was they never had a mission which was military or offensive or political, because you had these monks coming from the monasteries in the Middle East, and they moved along the Silk Road together with the merchants, you know, because it was like a highway in that time, and you have to understand that you have different Silk Roads, so you have different itineraries, but going through Central Asia, that is today Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, etc. And we have some words on these monks saying they were traveling just with the Bible and, you know, a kind of bag, you know, as they were monks. They make a vow of poverty, and I think this is real missionary activity, you know, for the name of God, and with love and without any violence or power.
I see.
And I think this is a very precious example for missionaries today
Exactly.
who don't have the same
Qualities,
minds.
yeah. You talked about that in Kazakhstan. They found a place, a cemetery, I think.
Yes.
Can you tell us the story, and how is this connected to the Assyrian church?
Well, of course, this is not very well known from the large public, so it's good to speak about it on your television. We had a conference on Syriac studies and on the Church of the East in Samarkand last September, organized by Salzburg University from Austria. And we had also some archaeologists, and among them, you know, well, there are two sites which they are digging these days. One is only 60 kilometers east of Samarkand. This is a monastery. So it was beautiful to say in which setting was the monastery, down the mountains, near water springs, in a quiet place. This is what is required for monastic life, you know. And we must remember also that often these monasteries were schools for teaching, you know, the monks and the other people. So there they have found some graveyard as well. So they found the bones of some monks, and well, you have a website, maybe we can put it, you know, where you can read about these archaeological founds. And then a parallel team is working in Ilibalik. So Ilibalik is about 300 kilometers northeast of Almaty, which used to be the capital of Kazakhstan. And when I said, well, can I go and come back in one day, 300 kilometers? They said, no worry, you know, because the Chinese have made a new highway and you can go and come back. And yes, we took only 3 hours. And by the way, it's near the river Ili. and it is very close to the Chinese border, this place today. And there they also digged and found a graveyard, and I was touched because you know, they found, for example, the colors of some the jewels of some women, and some are made of coral and some are made of pearls, which shows that these families were rich, probably because they were merchants, and that was an active area for on the Silk Road, you know, to make good business, if I can say things like that.
Yeah.
But what was really surprising was to meet some families of the Church of the East, or of this tradition, you know, living today in Almaty.
In Almaty, which is again in
Kazakhstan. Yes, there are about 100 people. And how did they end up there? They were their families, their grandfathers, grandmothers, and in fact I met one of the grandfather and I took some notes of what he explained, you know. And his family, well, he was 7 years old when under Stalin they were deported to Kazakhstan from Georgia, where of course, you know, you had also people of the Church of the East who moved after the genocide of 1915. Some moved to Armenia, some to Georgia, some to Russia.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they were from Georgia, were moved to a village about 60 kilometers from Almaty, and today, well, they have a good life, they are well organized. And the miracle is that they still speak Syriac.
Wow.
Can you imagine? But they don't read it and they don't write it. And they don't have a priest or any parish.
And they don't have a church.
They don't have a church. And even Patriarch Awa did not know about this small community. But so it was very moving to meet these people.
It's very, very moving to hear about it because,
because
the resilience,
nobody knows.
Yeah, the resilience of 100 people who through everything, through all these, you know, genocides, massacres, and
it's a miracle.
It's a miracle. I
really.
mean, it shows how strong they are, how resilient they are.
And God had pity on some of them, those who did not die. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope that, I hope that we can, through this maybe episode, maybe we can still have some kind of connection with them, and
it would
hopefully
be nice.
It's very interesting to always reach out to our people around the world, because sadly we are scattered now all over the world because of these things.
Yes, and then I would like, to mention that I went to Hakkari in southeast Turkey with Nicholas, Dr. Nicholas Algello. That was 3 years ago, because I wanted so much to visit that area, but you know, for years, for decades even, it was not possible for security reasons, because you had this Kurdish guerrilla, let's say, in Turkey, and so it was possible. We went there from Mardin, and we had a car and driver, and for about 10 days we visited quite a few churches. And I want to say to your people, and young people especially, who want to go back to the place of their ancestors, that they can go there safely. Today there is even a Hilton hotel open now near the airport, and not far, I mean, it's 45 minutes from Hakkari town, and then from Hakkari to Kochanes it's about 30 kilometers. Then it is still a dirt road, but you can go with a Land Rover and a driver. And of course, I think this is the most moving place which you can visit when you are from your church of the East. So I can say that, well, of course, the village as such is quite destroyed. The church itself has been damaged, and because this is a real problem in Turkey, that some people hear that you have treasures buried in these churches, so they go at night or maybe also in daytime and dig, which is, you understand, when they dig and it's maybe 3 or 4 meters down, then they will damage the walls, you know, and the walls will collapse. And instead of doing some repair, you know, on the contrary, they cause more damage. And this is, of course, very, very unpleasant and sad. But what to do, you know, because you have nobody left of your people. There is not any bishop or priest or even not any layman or laywoman.
No.
All the people are Kurds and it's not their history, you know.
Yeah.
But I must say at the same time that these people, these Kurdish people we met in some villages, towns and villages, were very nice and welcoming, you know. Some even spoke of the Assyrian genocide, you know, so some were informed. And like elsewhere in Turkey, maybe you have people who deny it, but you have some people who are better, well, they know better or they are better informed.
Yeah.
So it's just to say that the context, I think, is positive for your people to visit the places, villages of your ancestors, and the nature is very beautiful with the high mountains,
Hopefully.
with the valleys and rivers, and
Yeah.
I recommend that
I
they
think
go
it's,
there.
it's always in the back of mind of everyone to go there, but maybe now they hear it, they become more encouraged.
I went to
go there.
Habur River also some years ago. Of course, that was before the war, so I know that the bishop of Syria told me that nowadays, of course, many of your people left the place.
Yeah.
And this is the very sad thing, you know, because of course, from the time of Timur Lenk, your church disappeared, so to say,
Yeah.
in the whole of Asia.
Yeah.
And the patriarch wanted to be in a safe place, which explains
Yeah,
that
I
they
was-
went to the most remote place, and they went. It's like this that they ended up
Yeah.
in Hakkari.
Actually, this
and
is
in
that was my
Kochanes.
question. Yeah, talking about Hakkari, I thought to maybe a little bit have this picture of why we ended up in Hakkari and what was the, you know, the impact of Timur Lenk invasion of the Church of the East and all about that. So you said that it's the reason why we were in Hakkari, but could you elaborate more
for
to make it
security
clear?
reasons, you know.
Yeah.
And so then, you know, in 1915, they suffered the genocide. The patriarch and most of the people left to Urmia in the northwestern part of Iran today. They were attacked again. Then
Yeah.
they went to Iraq, which was under British mandate. They felt they were safe. Then, you know, when Iraq became an independent country, well, the patriarch was forced to leave the place because, you know, they said you can be a spiritual leader but not a political leader. And what to do? I mean, they have no king, they have no president, or I don't know which
Yeah.
word to
Yeah.
use. And of course, the patriarch, in the context of the Oriental churches, had the role of also,
leader.
of course, of a spiritual father, but also of a political father,
True.
because he represented the whole community.
Exactly.
But of course, in modern terms, this is sometimes difficult to
Yeah.
understand for people who haven't had the same history.
Yeah. So just to, you know, sum this part up. So basically, like you said, we have this huge expansion in Asia, and then there were Timur Lenk invasion, and that which made that the Assyrians end up in Hakkari, remotely to feel safe. And then there was the Sayfu genocide in the 1915 that also made them people to move to Urmia, like you mentioned, down to Iraq, and some of them moved to Syria. So we see
To the Habur
to Khabur River.
and Hasake, but Hasake did not exist in
No,
that time.
yeah, but this is the northeast Syria, basically.
And to the diaspora worldwide.
Exactly. So all of these are very important because sometimes people just look at the last years of you know, genocide, but they don't understand the sequence where the
So
church
you have,
had this.
that's how you have an expansion
Yeah.
today in the whole world, and this
Exactly.
is of course wonderful, and I think again a miracle. So
We
because
survive.
you have people living in Europe,
Mm,
in North America, and in Australia,
yeah.
and we should never forget, of course, your people in India,
In
because
India. Yeah, we were going to go
the
there.
history is very complicated, so we cannot explain the whole history.
Yeah.
But they were the first Christians and the first bishops in
Mm.
India, you know. And well, then you had other churches coming with missionary intentions, and that explains that today, well, your church in India has only about 25,000 people, and others have millions of
Yeah.
faithful.
Correct. Now, if we like to move a bit to relatively modern history of the church, you mentioned about the effect of the patriarchal seat being moved to Chicago in the 1940 and then to Erbil in 2015. In your opinion, and according to what you've written in your book, what prompted these moves and how have they affected the church's leadership and its followers?
I think it was already the will of Mardinka, the late patriarch, you know, but it took years to be organized, you know. And in fact, in 2015, I went to Erbil to show my support to your people and church people and people, because I thought that was so brave, because that was a time where at the same time I visited refugee camps in Erbil and Dohuk, you know, so it was a very difficult time for the Christians in Iraq.
Correct.
And well, in Syria because of the invasion of Mosul, but also because many moved to Iraq, so it was difficult also in Iraq. Not to forget, you know, all the people, Christians, who left before from Baghdad, even Basra, going to this so-called Kurdistan area. And so I think that it was very brave to go back to the countries of your ancestors. It was very brave to go there at a time when it was dangerous. And they did this in order to support your people and to show them that if the patriarch goes back, they can remain, you know, because the terrible thing is this exodus of Christians, not only of your church, but all the Christians. So I think it was really a heroic act of the patriarch and of the synod of the bishops who decided all together that the seat was going to be in Erbil. And by the way, in the 14th century, Erbil had been already a seat of your patriarchs.
So it was not the first time?
It was not the first time.
Okay. So you in your opinion, it shows that if we go back, then it's encouraging for the people to also go back again to their country.
Yes, well, somehow it happens with the Syrian-Orthodoxe in Tur-Abdin, you know. Of course, it's not because you have your ups and downs, so you have some Syrian Orthodox who went back to their villages, also because if they still had papers to show their property of the past, the Turkish government had a law to allow them to take back whatever was left of their buildings and land. And so you don't have that for the people of the Church of the East. But like also the old people, they don't want to leave the place. But the young people, you know, they want something else. They want peace. And just to come back to the fact when we said that the patriarch himself was walking with his people to Persia, and from Persia to Iraq, and from Iraq to Habur. And when you know that the events, of course, in Raqqa, you know, with the Islamists, and again your people, you know, they went to Habur to be in a peaceful place, and again your people were attacked, were kidnapped, etc. And nearly all of them left now in Habur. So this shows that there is like a terrible circle, you know, of these persecutions, we can say, against Christians, including against your people, you know. So you can also understand that some people say, I want peace, I want a normal life for my children and my grandchildren. So we cannot judge the people who leave the Middle East, you know, and come and settle in the so-called diaspora. But again, I mean, I think it's a very challenging debate and also choice for young people to go back, you know. And I know that Marawa has received some young people of the Church of the East who wished to go back, work with him, work for the church in Iraq and in the Middle East. So I think, yes, this is wonderful. But You must forget about yourself.
Yeah.
You must see beyond. You must think of your people. You must think of your history.
Yeah.
You must think of your church. You see, so it's sacrifice.
Exactly.
But it's existential.
Yeah.
So you know why you do it. You
Exactly.
know,
It's
and so it's not lost. It's gained.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it's
That's,
in front of God. It is, you do things like that only in front of God.
Exactly. And it's
It's not for your glory. It's not, you know, for making business or making money. It is to understand globally.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a Christian of the Church of the East today?
Yeah.
And then, are you ready to make such a sacrifice or not? And of course, I admire very much these young people.
Well, I would like to thank you for your nice words and your encouraging words for that. This was one of the points that we were discussing. Other point is that you probably heard them through your research and when you've done the book, is that many call the Assyrian Church of the East the Nestorian Church. So what is your opinion on that, and is it wrongly coined, and why is this word is connected to our church, to the east of the to the Church of the East?
So of course, this name or sobriquet is wrong and negative, you know, because this creates many debates also at the theological level with some churches, even in the Middle East today. And I think that people have to study carefully these theological questions. And I don't want to quote myself. I want to quote Sebastian Brock, because he is famous in the whole world and one of the best scholars in Syriac studies. So he explains in the preface, which he wrote for my book, no, that this is misleading, you know. And he even has an article about it, you know, saying that, well, we should not call your people Nestorian today. And in fact, the Church of the East has had a dialogue for the last decades with the Catholic Church of Rome, and they signed an agreement in 1964 saying, yes, that your people believe that Jesus Christ is fully God and fully man, but it's not, the divinity and humanity are not separate, you know. They are not mingled, and they are not separate. So there is a balance, you know, and this is the faith of your people. So, and it's the whole argumentations about the Syriac word knome, which should never be translated as person, because then this was the misunderstanding, that people, outsiders, think that you believe that Jesus has two persons. No, he's one person. And all this is said in this written agreement with the Catholic Church.
Speaking of the Catholic Church, what was the impact of Catholicism on the Assyrian Church of the East, and how does this Catholic Church affected it? And now we have Assyrian Chaldeans, or at least the church is called the Chaldean Church. How did this affect it, you know, the identity of the Assyrian or the history of the Assyrian Church?
Well, it began with the missionary activities of some Catholic orders in the Middle East in general, and also in Mosul. And because your people were in Hakkari and around, because it was south and west of Hakkari, that is, like in Iran, you still have people of the Church of the East today. You still have a bishop, as you know. And south, yes, of Hakkari, you have Mosul. So the Catholic missionaries began to enter these valleys, you know, where the tribes of the Church of the East were living, and they managed to make some of them Catholic, and that became, you know, the Chaldean Church, which means they kept the same prayers, the same liturgy like in the Church of the East, but all these people were put under the Pope of Rome until now, you know.
Correct.
And also cutting some prayers, changing some texts, you know, to adapt to the Catholic faith and tradition. So, well, I myself, I regret this because these people, they say, we are from the Church of the East. Yes, it's true, their ancestors were from the Church of the East, but if I had the power, I would advise them to go back to their mother church, you know. But of course, why did they do that? Because in the context of pre or after genocide or during the genocide, they had hope, you know, that like the French were helping the Catholics, the British were helping the Protestants in this area, you know. They had these French and British mandates. So of course they were hoping to be helped, you know, by these people, because the Catholics and of course the British had their ambassadors at the gate, at the Ottoman government, you know, and so who could speak in favor of these Christians who were Catholic or Protestant, you see. So you have to understand also the situation of the time, and they were looking already for safety, for security, for survival. We have to use the word, you know. But I think that today, in the global world, and we have these people of the Church of the East and Chaldeans all around the world, you know, and I think it's not for the Church of the East to become Chaldean, for sure, because today we respect these ancient apostolic churches. So I am in favor that the Chaldeans go back to their mother church, the Assyrian Church of the East.
And then, I mean, this could be a little bit political, and that this separation of this church from the Syrian East of the Church of the East to the Catholic Church has also made a separation between the people, where now those who belong, Assyrians who belong to the Catholic Church, no longer identify as Assyrians. Not all of them, but few of them. Now we are different, even ethnicity or different race. That we are Chaldeans, we are not Assyrians. Knowing that before the separation from the church, they were actually all one. So the separation of the church has its toll not only within the church, but within as a community, as an identity for the whole community.
Yes, I think that some Chaldeans I have met are very political minded, especially, you know, with the project of the plain of Nineveh and all that. But I would say that this is a problem with the Christians also in Eastern Europe or in the Middle East, is the question of nationalism, or in your case of the tribal notion of your people. And I think it's where, you know, spirituality should put you to ask questions at a higher level, at a spiritual level. Of course, you are a group of people, and you are unique in history, and you are a unique church. But I think for the future, people have to look more for the spiritual side of this identity. And I know that you are very involved in political issues for the Assyrians in general. And well, I can understand, because it is your identity. And why not? I mean, it's part of your quest, of your reason of you know, to be Christians of the Middle East in your own way, in your own history. But for me, the future is to look for, and for, we spoke of revival, we spoke of survival, you know, and I know that your people care very much. We spoke of the language, but to give an example, these people in Almaty, the young people, some had never read the gospel. So I think, of course, it is very good to learn your languages of today, which are spoken. Also the Syriac, which is used in church. This is more demanding, more difficult. But, for instance, do you understand really deeply all the words which you repeat in church during the liturgy on Sunday. And I think for me this is now the next step, you know, to enter slowly but with hope and comfort in your church's womb, I would say, and read your church fathers and read the lives of your holy monks, you know, and to get inspired for your own spiritual life, because for me language, history, politics, this is not enough to be a human being and to be a Christian of the Middle East. But this is my approach.
I agree. I totally agree.
And all these books now are translated, you know, into English, French, German. I'm sure there are also some translations into Swedish. So I think also the priests should explain all these texts which you repeat, at least what you say on Sunday, and that you understand the spiritual food which you get, and not to repeat blindly and by heart. But all these words have to become alive.
What's the impact of them?
Must be all these texts must become alive. Must chant in your heart, and in your mind, and in your daily life. In your Christian daily life.
I agree. I absolutely agree. You talked about, you know, that these people, or now we have a lot of Assyrians in the diaspora. We have seen also that the church has moved to the diaspora in order to be with their people. And you also talked
and to be saved.
To be saved, obviously.
Nobody can deny,
exactly.
This
Safety
necessity.
is,
Yes, they have enough, you know, it's enough.
And you also talked about how that we still repeat this old Assyrian language in the church. My question is that how did this church manage, even though, like you said, obviously not a lot of people actually understand this old language.
The deep meaning of the words.
But my question is that how did this church manage to keep living in the diaspora in a communities that is not similar to where it actually established? How did this church manage to keep these traditions, and at the same time what challenges it might face living in the diaspora and away from their homeland as a church?
Well, of course there are many challenges, and of course when you live in the so-called diaspora, well, then you have mixed marriages, or you are very influenced by the modern life of the country, and so it is a fight. It is a spiritual fight, you know, but Christian life is a spiritual struggle in itself. And then I think there must be awareness, you know, that, as I said, it's very important, if possible, that your children will keep the language, either the modern or the ancient Syriac. I think that today through internet, etc., it's possible that you learn at least a little bit, you know. Not everybody will become a scholar, but at least I would say to understand what is said during the liturgy. That for me would be a minimum, you know, and it's possible for everybody, you know. So I would not be so strict to say that you must study for years, but we must be reasonable and we must find a balance, because otherwise people will not have the courage to do it. But you know, it's like a baby. The baby, you don't give meat immediately, you begin with milk. And spiritual life is the same. You begin step by step. And once people taste, you know, I always say, do you prefer a McDonald's hamburger, a good meal from your tradition, cooked by your grandmother? And everybody will say, I prefer my grandmother's cooking, you know. So spiritual life is the same. So do you want McDonald's spirituality of our modern world, or do you want to go back and get the inspiration? Also, you know, that was the case, I said before, given by your monk who were walking all the way to China, you know, to teach the gospel, you know. So you must be faithful to these people. You must remember them. And once you begin to read their lives, you know, and to read what they have written on spiritual life and on the faith of your church, don't you think that this is the best food?
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, I could have said it any better than you did. Looking forward in the future, how would you see the future of the Assyrian Church? And based on your research, are there any signs of revival or growth that you find particularly hopeful?
Yes, we mentioned that you have these communities today in Europe, in North America, in Australia, in these continents, of course. You have examples of things which are very good and which have been organized for your people and for other people also to know about your church and history, like in Chicago. You have even a small museum. Mahawa told me that he hopes to have a small museum in Erbil. So this would be a nice way to have, you know, outsiders to know a little bit more about your community and also for your own people. I think all these things, you know, either cultural or linguistic or religious, they could be organized in the future on WhatsApp, on YouTube's, on internet, you know. So I think the challenge is how to keep tradition in modernity. So we can use today the internet, the YouTubes, etc., to teach your people in a proper way by the proper people, you know. And then, of course, this requires that some of your people, including the youth like you, you know, you will learn about your church tradition, your history, your language, etc., the readings of your fathers and monks, etc. So maybe it's very demanding, but I think it's worth. Because if I did it, if I enjoyed it, and I'm not of your tradition, but I received much, I repeat, spiritual food when I read from the texts of your church. So I'm sure that the people of your church will also enjoy it, you know, and receive great benefit for their life.
I hope that, I mean, I really
you must
hope
have people to organize all
exactly.
this.
I hope that people would, after reading your book maybe, or watching this interview, that they have this inspiration, that they actually wanna do this. I mean, I myself might not consider myself as a religious person, but just hearing how you are describing it, it's actually encouraged me to actually dig deeper in this and see what it's actually about. And
you will dig deeper and you will find a treasure. It's not like in the churches in Hakkari, they find nothing. You will find a treasure, a spiritual treasure of your church. Because I think your young Assyrian people speak a lot of politics and things like that. But when you speak of identity, you also have to understand that identity is not only political.
Correct.
It's a whole, it's a global notion. And it includes religion, because your people have been Christian and they have their special history, and not history only at the historical level, but at the church level, you know. So there are so many things to be discovered. And you know, when I was in India last September, I told the people of the Church of the East, why don't you go as a pilgrimage? Not, well, of course, everybody wants to go to Jerusalem, but I said, why don't you go to Central Asia? That's another place where the young people and people could go, you know, and visit these archaeological places. And
that's a great idea.
Yes,
I like
so
it.
maybe on the way to India, and for Indians it's cheaper than to go to the Middle East or Europe. So you have to be inventive, you know, and you have to meet all kinds of people, maybe also funny ones like me, you know, I traveled a lot and I know many people. So if I can do anything to help your people, I would be happy.
I am so, I mean, I'm humbled, to be honest, with your words. And I want to say thank you so much. And I really appreciate all the efforts that you are doing. And I hope that you get the love gift that you are giving us. We give it back to you, and I'm really thankful for you and your words. I've read your book, and I really enjoyed it. It's really wonderful. It's very easy to read. What do you want the readers of your book to get out of your book? What is the message that you hope your readers get?
Well, I spoke, in fact, in this book I only speak of history and geography. Of course, you have to, I don't know if I shall have time, I'm old to write another book, but you can find very good books giving you bibliography, about what spiritual life and the lives of the saints and the lives of the monks and etc. and liturgical life. So I think this is very important, but it's not included in my book. And I want to say also that the book was translated into Arabic, but also into Russian, because you still have a community of quite a number of people in Russia, and many became Russian Orthodox. So it's like with the Chaldean Church, you see, after the genocide, when they went to Russia, they had no priest, they had no church. They wanted to remain Christians, and I think that these people in Russia should be allowed, to also go back to their own church, mother church. You have 3 church buildings in Russia today. So I think that the local churches or the Catholic Church, they should understand the history, and that today people have a right, to go back to their mother church. Of course, it is in your hands, it is in your hearts to decide, because you can lose very quickly an identity, and a Christian identity, and a Church of the East identity. It can be lost in 1 generation, maybe 2, maximum 3. So I think this is the turning point now. So it's a very urgent and important time to make the correct choices.
Hopefully. If someone, I think if someone is interested in reading your book, which I think many will be after this beautiful interview, where they can find the book, where they can buy it.
It was printed by Peter Lang at Oxford, but you can find it on Amazon as well.
So just going into Amazon, writing the name of the book, The Assyrian Church of the East.
And my name, Chaillot.
Exactly. I think they will find it. They can order it, and it's worldwide, right?
Yes.
Great. Before we end the interview, is there anything else that you would like to add, or any key points you hope to emphasize about the Assyrian Church of the East or about your book?
Well, I think, we spend so much time, even myself, I must confess, watching television, because we are tired in the evening and we need to relax, But when do we stand in front of God? How many minutes do we take every day just to stand in front of God? Which means that it's a existential moment, even if it's 2 or 3 minutes, And then when you can meditate, I would say, on your history, on the church life until today, and that you are one member of this church, and when many members are together, this is what we call the church, in fact, And then I think when 2 or 3 are together and, meditate on all that and decide to be active, then, miracles again can happen. And the Church of the East could have disappeared along the centuries. Before they went to Hakkari, and later it was even worse, So it's a miracle that your church is still alive. And we want it, because I love very much the Church of the East. I want other people to respect it, And I think that also you are the actors of this history for tomorrow, and for the church to remain alive. And I think it's good, as I said, to have some anthropological, sociological, political studies and approach of your church and people, but go back to the roots. And then,
always.
And then you will receive the spiritual food and be happy.
Beautiful. I really want to thank you again. It's been such an honor to have you here, and I have, during this short interview, I've learned so much from you. It's been a rich interview, and I really want to thank you again to this beautiful interview, and we are honored in Assyria TV to have you here with us. And for you, our viewers, thank you so much for being with us today. And again, you can find the book if you are interested to read it on Amazon. There's all the information there you need. We can also put the link for the book. هاويتو بسيمة رابا بجانم يقرأ خازخ لخو خاجة خيتا.
La